Ladies and gentlemen, it is a series on Wellington between none other than CMBW and TheShambler. So enjoy that. We already have some interesting stuff going on here where Mesk himself has randomed into Protoss. He said that he's gotten randomed into Protoss like every game for a while now, so he must be feeling pretty good about himself. And I hope you guys are feeling pretty good too, because CMBW has seen quite a massive amount of activity, we should say, in the month of February. And, the whole time leading up to the replay stuff and PvP games happening and all that stuff. So castovers are galore. We, more days than not in the month of February, we had a castover up between Mesk and myself. We got Luciferia showing some interest in doing some casting. We got, maybe some other people will come around and start being Cosmonarchy Brood War content creators, bro. You never know. So, anyway, some fun shit. And glad to have everybody on board. I will say, one thing I noticed is that Mesk was saturating or tasking workers on the lower yield mineral fields first, and I always try to double saturate the high yield ones. It might be a point to try and optimize people's build orders or early income or whatever. We don't really see... I think TheShambler's kind of done the same thing, actually, as me, in that sense. We don't see him harvesting from any of the low yield ones, and it's allowed him to get his Quasrock pool relatively early on. We do have some silliness over here. A little bit of gas harvesting starting for Mesk. There was a game that I played against him. I don't remember if this is before or after this particular matchup, where he said that this ridge kind of blends in. And this map is by Darkened Fantasies, of course. I should mention that. It is Wellington. And there you go. We caught the scout death over here. So there will be no further information. But he didn't scout any gas harvesting, so he shouldn't feel too bad about the current situation. And actually, I don't know if there was an undue amount of micro to try to save this scout worker or what, but TheShambler ended up delaying his expansion for quite a bit of time and still hasn't gotten any gas. If you've ever watched me play Zerg, you know I like my Larvos colony, so I always end up harvesting a little bit of gas in the early game and then peeling off of that to go mineral heavy if that's the thing that I want to do. And so that's usually what my build order ends up doing. Now, it is 150... Well, it's 200 minerals, technically, for our Larvosk, because you get the 50 for the worker, and then you obviously have 75 for the Kagrant and 75 more for the Larvosk itself, and then it's 25 gas for the Larvosk. So it's no cheap... It's not cheap, right? It's quite expensive. Something that I have also enjoyed is I've noticed that more and more people are going Lattice Opener. Now, I do want to avoid it being, too powerful or whatever, where it all feels like you have to go Lattice, you can't ever go Gateway. I don't think that is the case. In fact, there's PvPs in the past where I specifically have said, my opponent is going Lattice, I'll keep to my Gateway, and then I build Dracodons, and they can't really do anything, right? So it's certainly not without answer, right? At least in the mirror matchup, we could say. And I think Gateway first can be quite powerful against, for example, Terran or what have you. The main advantage that the Lattice offers is it gives you two options that are mineral only instead of just the Zealot. So you have more flexibility if you want to conserve your gas for something else. And so usually you end up seeing somebody go for a greedy sort of opener. Now, this is really good movement from Mesk here to ambush, you could say, and take advantage of the height advantage there. That was a bit of a mouthful of a sentence. But Quasilisks have 1 less range than Sims normally. Now, in that particular engagement, they had 3 less range, because you get +2 range when you're attacking a low ground target from the high ground. It's actually a +2 range per height differential. So if, for some reason, I don't think there is such a thing as a double-stacked cliff over here, but if there was another ledge over here, and you had a unit here, and it was targeting a low ground unit, it would actually get +4 range instead of +2. That's something that I think map design has yet to really show up here. Now, not really any micro or focus fire coming out of Mesk here does mean that he loses some of his early units. The Vassal does come in and confirm a Spraith colony and an expansion, so it's not going to get any eco harassment down. For some reason, there was a withdrawal. I'm not sure why, and there's a random scribe there. This map has been updated a few times, so there used to be a pathway into this area. So maybe Mesk is remembering that version of the map, or maybe he's just a little silly, a little bit of a goofy goober. He does have enough money to expand, and he will be doing so on this low ground base. Now, this low ground base, I actually don't like expanding here first, because obviously it has less gas, which is a big thing, since the other base has a ridge. And I don't know that it's actually more defensible. I mean, there's now only one path into it, so I think that was an improvement. Well, there's one path into it if you're not coming through the main. And as you can see, Mesk is trying to get a figure on what's going on there. There was also some point where he mentioned that this island base, he didn't know it was an island. So his vassals do confirm the presence of some more quasis out on the field. And that's another unit, I was talking about the Simulacra opener, or the Lattice opener. One of the things that I like about the Lattice opener is when people do it, and then don't ever really build vassals, or don't build vassals first, then you're like, oh, should I build anti-air or whatever? And usually what I've tried to do as a response to this is not build any static defense until I see the opener of what they're actually doing, and in the meantime build a multi-role unit that can attack both ground and air. In this case it would be Quasilisks, because obviously that's what Shambler has gone for. And I think that this is going to be quite effective. Obviously, if you have like 1.5x the manifolds in Quasilisks in terms of numbers, at this level of scale, that kind of evens out. But the Quasis are actually just going to be able to scoop right in here and start picking off. They only pick off a single worker, and then they immediately fall back, driven away by the manifolds, which I think, honestly, they could win. They could have won the fight if they had taken the fight at the moment. But yeah, and now Mesk also a little bit unsure of his own abilities. Obviously, definitely could win that fight pretty easily. And now this is, sort of backed into a corner. Oh, this isn't an island. Okay. Oh, he spotted him. Okay. All good there. All good in the hood. Expansion going down, has a matrix already. That's 50 gas, remember, so not exactly cheap. And yeah, Shambler here floating a ton of money. I'm not sure what he's doing. I think maybe he was overly microing his forces. That is something that I've tried to get better at doing, is even if I end up losing some engagements due to poor micro, if I get ahead in the macro because my opponent is microing and I'm macroing, like we're all at that kind of skill level where that doesn't really matter that much. And it looks like Shambler just figured out that this is an island. So maybe he was thrown for a loop by what Mesk said. I think Mesk is just confused. He thought this was an island, maybe? Maybe? I don't know. Not sure. Couldn't tell you. He'll probably comment below. He's Malcor Galanus, and he's he'll comment below for sure. Now, this manifold hit squad can definitely pick apart the Quasis. If he's not careful, he can even lose the Circuith. It looks like instead there's just going to be some movement to the right side here where there is no Circuith colony yet, and that Larvosk is probably not long for this world. Now, if I'm Mesk, I don't bother attacking the mineral workers here because minerals are a dime a dozen, right? Like, if it's the early game or you suspect your opponent is actually trying to keep, be aggressive against you or whatever, that's sort of a separate thing entirely. But in this particular case, it doesn't really feel like Mesk got too much done. He did, thin the herd of Quasis, but he didn't kill Larvosk. He didn't really kill... He killed one worker. He stopped all mining time, which is effective for sure. And at this point, remember, Mesk is getting to the point where he's actually ahead in bases. This is something I've noticed from the Shambler, is that, he intended to expand here, but he doesn't know it's an island. It feels like the Shambler sometimes forgets to expand or something to that effect anyway, so that's kind of interesting. Now, this is another thing that, like, you would criticize, but you don't really, like, yes, these two workers could be harvesting minerals the whole time, but if you're not going to rely on your multi-targeting, or multitasking, rather, if you're not capable of that or what have you, then this could definitely be fine. It's like, yeah, just let the workers sort of do the trick here. Now, some of the idle workers actually helping out quite a bit here. So that should be a couple of dead Quasis. So that's 4 Quasis. That's a little bit more than maybe you would expect for a single matrix. Now, the reinforcements are coming in, and so this should not result in a dead base. Meanwhile, this one over here, just a little bit of mineral harvesting. Again, not targeting those high yields just yet. I know I panned away from the battle, which I'm sure you guys were very upset about, but it was a done deal. There was no chance of any losses, really, for Mesk. So he's good to go. Some more idle workers here. Still not taking another base. This worker sat there very confused, very sad for himself. It looks like another Spraith colony is destined. Meanwhile, Hydrock Den, maybe he ran out of money there. Yeah, this is another thing that I've noticed about pretty much all the players here, is like they'll fall behind in worker counts. We saw when it was Shambler against Ben, obviously Shambler had like double his worker count, and despite having less bases. And that's something that I think, like, that's an extreme example of that, but in reality, like, that kind of thing can happen. And so, that's just something to keep watch for, basically. I do think that Mesk is doing pretty good with map control. Obviously, he could have put a pylon down here to spot the Quasis earlier, and then he wouldn't have lost any mining time over here. But he's resaturated that base a little bit. He is getting the gas, so there is that. Now, the Hydrock Den is done, but at what cost, right? There's not really a whole lot of any resource harvesting. Now, Mesk could just tickle in here, do his best to maybe disrupt some of the mining time. I always try to target the gas workers if I can. Oh, right. Yeah, seeing a confused Droll. I don't know who Bug Abuse is. He's the only actual spectator. Oh, no, there's Knights of A Realm. No, that's an AI. Never mind. I was going to say, that must be Knight of the Realm. No, I think Bug Abuse is Knight of the Realm, but it could also be Alice. I honestly don't know. That was quite the firing squad of Quasis all along that ledge. Now, this fight is still probably Mesk favored, especially if one of these vassals pops in the middle of the fight. The Hydra's coming out will help to change that a little bit, but there's no front line. And, especially once these reinforcements come in, that should also assist. And this attack force should no longer be a problem. But I'm looking around, right? And I know there's a battle going on here, but I think it's more important to keep track of what the tech is. And right now, Mesk doesn't really seem to have any. So this force is quite dangerous, actually. Now, the Vassal does pop and enchant quite a few units, so that will definitely help. But doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Some focus fire on the Hydras, so it looks like there will be, just a few. So he's definitely reduced the threat level here, and I think that's quite big. Now the question is, are we still going to see the same attempt at trying to take down this base? There's been no confirmation that this base was taken. Obviously he scouted that earlier and didn't see it taken, but he's still on a base disadvantage, which you never want to be especially since you have less workers usually. So we're actually seeing this right now. There's 56 workers, 57 workers for Mesk to 43 for Shambler. It's not a terrible deficit, but obviously you would rather be in Mesk's position, economically speaking. Now Mesk only has 5 military units, to be fair. So there is that. Small hit squad coming in over here could be deadly, especially since these defenses are not finished yet, but there's 2 manifolds here to back it up. And I think with the Warden and the double matrix, we should actually be okay. That one even gets canceled, so he keeps the money, cycles the workers down in this location. Manifolds come down to try to do some backup. And again, just sort of whittling down the strength of the attack force. He's actually going to try to commit after this, but Mesk is fine with this because it means, his Crucible has a little bit more time to finish. I thought that was going to be an extra bit of static defense, but it looks like at this point it's not even required. He's dissuaded his opponent from even trying to take any other action. Now the third base is finally being selected and opted for. No gas being banked here at all, so very little opportunity for tier 2 to happen. There is an Astral Omen going down, so we should be able to see some Gladiuses to help keep the crowds under control, or maybe some Exemplars if he wants to mass those up, just go for the AoE instead of the bounce. Either way. Now Gladiuses have been a point of consternation because, I guess in some ways similar to Madrigals, people feel like the lack of a cap on them, right, because Gladiuses, they have projectiles which can bounce indefinitely, is definitely something that I think people, like, anytime you have a design that doesn't have a cap, it's like, holy shit, that's impossible, that's busted, whatever, right? So this worker is obviously misrallied. We do have a little bit of an engagement here, and some of the army was not in sync. Some of them getting stuck trying to attack workers. And the defense force is not super good here for Mesk, but he does have enough static defense that I think he can at least thin the front line, right? No more Quasis at this point. It's all Hydras, which you think maybe is not the end of the world, but it does mean that any losses you take are going to significantly reduce your level of power. And that is indeed exactly what we see. Some vassals confirming no island base yet, so Mesk has some good map awareness at this point. And he's even going to pick off one of the last Hydras here. And just with some vassals, he might even chase them down for a little bit longer. Honestly, he could have fought with the advantage there, and he's even... Wait, what is he going to do? Oh. All right, there was some tizouts. So what you obviously want to do is put static defense on here so you can take advantage of the extra range, but it doesn't look like Mesk is too incentivized to do that. The Crucible here is going to enchant the static defense, make that base a lot harder to break, by the way. Not very many people know about that. Does enchant all buildings, including static defense structures, increasing their attack rates. So you see right here, 0.7 instead of what the default is, which is 0.9. A little bit over 0.9, so that's a pretty significant boost, right? Although you think about ratios, you think about percentages, and it's not easy to internalize what that actually means. So this base being slowly set up, still no gas being really banked here. Now we do have, we're getting towards 300, but is that going to be enough? Is he just going to order up a round of Hydras? Something that Quasis end up doing okay at is substituting for Hydras when you're trying to bank gas. So they are still a threat, but we haven't seen any front line, so there's no pressure to force his units back, to have Mesk, fall back in order to take less damage or what have you. Now, crucially, because there's no map awareness over here, this attack has been allowed to just start to manifest in this direction. Now, I'm not sure that he realizes how powerful these matrices are going to be. Well, the Wardens are obviously on the front, but if he tries to commit any farther, the matrices are going to be turbocharged. And so, yeah, I think you can tell just based on that, like, the Wardens themselves not going down for quite a while is pretty significant, right? So the Gladius is not going to be sniped down, so good attempt reaction from Shambler here. Oh, so close. But you can see they're starting to just do the bounce trick, and yeah, there it is. So I'm not sure how significant the Gladiuses themselves were in that particular engagement, to be fair, but, significant enough, like, every bit helps kind of thing. And yeah, Mesk at this point only losing... He did lose the gas miners. I'm not sure when he'll resaturate that. And he obviously lost some static defense structures and maybe a little bit of tempo. But the Iris now going down means the Shambler, he doesn't want to fight at this point. He wants to wait. He wants to stall. Maybe he wants to posture somewhere. So here we go. Here's the magic moment. Some Gladius bounces. There we go. They're set loose on the mineral line. Oh, they're coming back. What can you do? Now, I'm pretty sure you can burrow and fix that. If not, that's obviously a separate bug. But he's not having any reaction. He's just sort of spinning. And the spinning is not a good reaction in general. Now, what can he do as a response to this? Yeah, like, he's not reacting at all. He's just letting his workers take hits. All right, now he's trying to attack them, but it's not going to be... He's just going to ward them off, right? He could obviously mutate them into structures, which would not be affected by the bounces currently, which is obviously a silly design thing that we intend to fix. And remember, Gladiuses are not cheap either, but they're definitely being... they're definitely paying for themselves here. I guess people haven't internalized that the way to fight this is to split, because obviously if there's nothing in range, and the range is not very large, then you are going to be in a situation where it can't do anything, right? What can it do? All it can do is, Jesus. All it can do is expire at that point, right? So you can take the affected unit and move it away, or more likely, a pair of affected units and move them away. It looks like there was an attempt to build some Nathracores. I would have preferred Skiths, but it looks like that's not in the cards here. No advanced structure here, and we're definitely favoring Mesk. We've been favoring Mesk just because he was ahead in bases. Keep in mind he was setting up the mineral-heavy base in the upper right-hand corner at the same time as this. And yeah, he's only lost a single Gladius. He's got more, so this base is basically forfeit. None of the workers evacuated, pretty much, so... yeah, and now Exemplars are coming in. This should basically be over relatively quickly. I would be very surprised if there can somehow be a hold. I'm not even sure what Shambler wants to do at this point. He's down to 2 bases versus the 3 operational of Mesk. He hasn't actually set this one up yet, right? We can kind of tell that. And this one is not harvesting gas either. So he's finally going to rip apart the Gladiuses. And remember, when the Gladius dies, it's so too do its bounces. Eventually, we're going to change it so that they have to be in the area to keep the bounces going, which is going to be similar to, like, Observance. This is very unfortunate, by the way. It's going to be similar to Observance for some of the other things. Now, actually, so what we're seeing right now is that hordes of Nathracores are not terrible against Gladiuses. It's just that, you know, he didn't have anything at his disposal. Scythicores obviously would have survived a little bit longer and been able to engage at something of a range. So you would imagine they would have been able to chase a little bit more. And now here comes the Vassals to help them. There are no problems there. And the Exemplars being conserved still bodes very poorly for the ground army. So we have to remember that. So there has been an alleged stabilization. Confirmation of this base from Mesk. I think he already knew about this, but either way, he's good to go. Still not saturating that ridge. We'll just keep track of that. I know that this happens to me all the time where I'm like busy doing some shit. That's why it's so effective. If you go in and harass some workers somewhere, like you have no confirmation that your opponent has actually resaturated them and rebuilt them, right? And so that's why it's so effective to do stuff like that. Just to siege a base real quick and do some things. So I do think that's pretty big. Flock of Scythicores trying to find the Gladiuses before they can really do any damage. And yeah, there's not enough Vassals and not enough Gladiuses to really fight against this. So, he could have maybe tried, like, the one thing he could have maybe done is actually try to kill his own vassal to spark the benefit or something, but you can see here a little bit of a face-off. It's not going to go too well for the Exemplars. I think they got 1 worker kill, and again, it was on minerals, so not necessarily the prime target. And, hey, some workers were ordered to harvest stuff over here, or maybe build stuff over here. Yeah, you can see how the Grand Library is going down now. Do we have anything else? We have a second Astral Omen, so just doubling down on the existing tech. He's got his gas very low, but he's got so many minerals, as is the problem very commonly. He could just continue spamming out Vassals. That's exactly what he's going to do. He has 4 lattices, but only 3 of them nearby, so... And I think Mesk has also commented before, he finds it difficult to use control groups, you know, citing the arthritis in his hand and stuff. Plus... I think there was, I can't remember the other thing that he was talking about that made it somewhat difficult, but like mid-game, he just sort of loses it entirely. And I think that's exactly what you see. And it's not exactly the control group thing, but it's like, in general, what you see is people lose focus in the middle of the game. So they lose the fundamentals, right? So this Gladius is going to start kiting backwards into all of the remaining forces. There's some static defense here as well. So yeah, you sniped a Gladius, but meanwhile, your forces are out of position to defend. Now, I understand why Shambler decided to go for this. I mean, obviously not all of the units are even attacking. I understand why Shambler decided to go for this. It makes sense in some ways, right? It's like, oh, okay, here's my move. I can start attacking and be, you know, go on the offensive or whatever. But you know, you're in a really rough spot right now. Basically, you do have your third back online, right? Or your nat, as it were, because your third is this. So you are back on 3 bases. Mesk is on to 4, and he has 2 ridges being harvested. You know, maybe he would like to take something like this. There's something going on here. Some thoughts happening over here, and he's even going to block off one of the mineral fields. So we love that. Oh, is he going to block it off completely? I think he's blocked it off completely, and that's just going to completely destroy his mineral mining. But you know what? He's got a lot of minerals to spare anyway. So. Owned. Good defenses over here. Should dissuade any Skithracore activity. Yeah, he's just going to see a lot of them get popped. There you go. Love to see that. And yeah, only killing a single warden, obviously almost killing another one. So no shot at that. A couple matrices and a warden setting down over here, which means, yeah, you're going to need to try a little bit harder there, because this base is also going to be mesked shortly. So he does cancel that. Does get popped. The 2 matrices over here means that even his Skithrakores are not really going to be well equipped. He's going to need another flock of them. And now he does have the Spiritith colonies. Now you're going to have to forgive the very rough audio visuals or audio part, because obviously I was just kit bashing this relatively quickly. But these do bounce, and when they die, they mutate back into Spraiths. But as you can see, there was enough vassals here and not a whole lot of action from other units that it doesn't look like it was really enough, but it definitely bought him way more time than standard Spraiths were. So, you know, yeah, we didn't really see a crazy amount of activity, of success in that particular front, but he kept the base, which is the important part. Now, the Skits were not in position, but the matrices are all down. The Wardens are still really putting the hurt on, and at this point, it looks like the Bactylisk is just trying his best. Oh, but he doesn't actually micro it, so it just walks after a scribe that was idle and dies a horrible death. So no more artillery, no more sieging, and that will be it. More attack forces being rallied over. I do have a bunch of Amaranths being trained here. And yeah, what can you do? Still not, he doesn't want that ridge ever. He's decided it's verboten. It's haram? Halal? I think halal is the good one. I'm not very cultured, as you guys may have noticed. So a bunch of Bactylisks morphing over here. This should be confirmation that... oh, actually, interestingly enough, the vassals come in just at the same time as this worker is trying to establish an island base. And that will be the 4th base for Shambler. Now, he's not... This is stupid, because he could have actually killed the worker before it built something, and that would have caused some very big consternation. Some Skithrakore is going down there to try to save them, but they're actually out of position now. Another set of them decides to arrive in the middle of this fight. A bunch of vassals sitting at that 4th base, but not really anything happening just yet. And yeah, here come the reinforcements. Is it actually going to be a reversal? What is Mesk planning? I haven't spotted any crazy tech. He's just got, you know, more and more ways to spend his minerals, it looks like. He obviously could be attacking on multiple fronts, maybe just like waypointing a bunch of shit to that base and forcing Shambler to decide which base he wants to protect and which base he wants to lose. The island does pose some problems because it's very gas heavy with the geyser and 2 ridges. Not very mineral heavy, but that's not what Shambler needs right now anyway, as you can tell by looking at his bank. And in fact, yeah, I'm kind of surprised there's not like a million macro hatches, even just to like, okay, let's put some creep up here, put some creep up here. You know, he's actually got the same problem that Mesk has in the low ground base on the mid left, where he doesn't have any way to anchor his position. Whereas Zerg, you would just want to build a macro hatch over there or whatever, and you'd be A-okay. But it looks like it's not quite necessary right now anyway. Again, Mesk has a bunch of Amaranths lying around in a few spots. He could just waypoint them down here and at least cause some distractions. And he does have a lot of other things, but he's not really spending any money. He doesn't have any gas. What is he trying to build? Oh, he's starting to lose his defensive line over here, thanks to the range increase from cliffs. Now the Amaranths are here. They obviously take very reduced damage from Quasis and from Bactylisks. Especially Bactylisks, they have 0 armor pen. Now the Wardens will try to help out with this fight a little bit, not really being kited into. But yeah, it looks like this base is going to be forfeit. And that will be the first significant loss that I think I've seen Mesk have this entire game. He is rallying a bunch of units over there, so maybe he can hold on to the Nexus and keep the gas harvesting, which is obviously the most vital part of it all. Now here come the vassals to go ahead and signify the arrival of the rest of the forces. I'm looking at the minimap, but it's very dead right now. It's just the activity over here that we're seeing, nothing else. And yeah, this force will indeed be cleaned up. So that was a very expensive army to be destroyed by the or for the Shambler. This base being taken over here means that he'll have access to more ridges. Obviously, he hasn't saturated this. And now, yeah, look at this. Waypointing off to the side. I'm not sure if Shambler noticed that. And even if he did notice it, what was he going to be able to do anyway? Now, critically, this base is very, very close to being destroyed. There's a bunch of Atreus's coming down. If they get support from the vassals, maybe they can do something. But at this point, this base wasn't even being set up, it looks like. There was no worker corpses there. So I don't even think that Shambler had started to benefit from that, which is probably going to be all the worse, right? Because it's not even like you temporarily got enough gas. We did see him spiking up to tier 2.5. This Atreus just sort of spinning. Not sure that it was... I mean, you can never really tell, like, should you just stand your ground and fight there or what? But yeah, actually, he's going to hold the Nexus again. And these Gladiuses have even destroyed the Hatcherosk, which is crazy. So there come the bounces. That's going to be good. And that will clear out the skits as well. They can even pressure over here, start bouncing off some more stuff, but it looks like they will be interrupted by, of course, this horde of air units. Now, this base... continuing to receive some attention from Mesk, but not in the sense of building workers and saturating resources and whatnot. He is going to reestablish bases over there. So really, Mesk is on 3 bases, which is exactly the same situation as we see for Shambler. It's really not that different. He has not rebuilt the second Spraith colony, and he hasn't remorphed them into Spiritists either. So kind of in a rough spot for that, too, if he ever gets raided by more air units, like a bunch of vassals, which, of course, could be afforded by Mesk, as we see here. All those Skithrakors getting popped by the Atreus's, and with vassal support, of course, some of them trailing over to confirm additional activities, additional movement. Now here come more vassals to enchant, of course. We love that. That alone is enough to give Shambler some pause, it looks like. And yeah, why not? Just follow him in, see what happens. Trickle him down. Oh, here come the Atreus as well. Yeah, there's a little bit of lack of attention here. Don't worry. What was Mesk doing in the meantime? Was he warping in some more stuff? He does have a Monument of Sin. Meanwhile, he is getting more lattices so he can spam out more vassals. Love to see it. We wouldn't even really hate to see Sims here. They take down buildings a lot better than vassals, for example. Not crazy at it, but you could just waypoint them over here, for example, or whatever, right? Same for Amaranths, for that matter. But if you just want the vassals, it makes sense. He's actually down to 0 minerals, guys. They've both spent their money somehow. It's shocking. And we know what Shambler likes to do, right? He likes to get his Matraval Nest. He likes to get to tier 2.5 and start doing that. He is going to be going for Vithrilis because I think it's just a small spattering so he can try to deal with the vassals and maybe some of the Astral Omen tech a little bit easier. And yeah, at this point, we have seen that there's some vassals massing around just to make sure that they understand where the enemy army is. I think he could go for a fight over there if he wanted to, but he's very paranoid, Mesk is, about whether or not Shambler is just going to roll down. And I think the reason why all the minerals disappear... Oh my god. Just yeah, you don't need minerals, I guess. That's true. The reason why all the minerals disappeared for Shambler must have been all those Zoristhiliths. They are going to now start tickling this base, but I don't think it's going to be significant enough. Only 1 harvester anyway, so it doesn't represent a huge amount of value. And I think with these Amaranths over here, actually, I don't know what they're doing. It looks like they were trying to go after the Quasis. But there's no anti-air over here, really. The Skithrakors are going to come in a little bit too late. So more units actually coming in from the right side for Shambler. And now the Skithrakor's trying to wrap around to snipe out the Matrix. There's 1 remaining. It will be focused down. And unfortunately for Mesk, it does look like this base is not going to be long for the world. What is his response elsewhere? A couple of Wardens here that he... You know, Shambler just wants to free up the mineral fields. That's all he's really trying to do here. Meanwhile, these Amaranths staying alive forever. So 3 of them will still stay alive. There's only 2 Quasilisks left in the area now. Some more reinforcements coming in, but they're all anti-ground. Atreus is massing up over in this direction. And look at that. They're going to start ripping out all of those very precious mineral miners, which I'm sure are very important to Shambler because he's floating 2k again almost. Get on Mesk's level, dude. He's got 3k, and that's 3. All right, as Zoristhilith going down here very shortly. There it is. And the Vithrilisks, yeah, I mean, you like to have them against, air, especially heavy air, but it's not really going to help you out too much over in this situation because the biggest threat comes from the Atreus's. And look at that, your static defense, even enchanting them, which is, the vassals are almost all gone now, so it's not really possible to have that happen again. But yeah, we can see some Atreus or Amaranth reinforcements coming on in. More Amaranths just waypointing somewhere. Looks like they're also attack moving into this direction. They'll get picked up by the stuff over here. I saw a Convolutk. I saw a couple of Matrolets. So there will be some really Rokors. What is the Monument of Sin building? It's just now ordered up a single Star Sovereign. That is all that he has been able to build with that so far. And I do suspect he would like to fly it over here and glass this base or something to that effect. That will be significant, I imagine. Has he finally started? No, this ridge is still... This is the fucking lost ridge, dude. Nobody wants him. Meanwhile, some Amaranth's coming in here to tickle workers. Just the act of forcing them to borrow is funny enough. I mean, obviously, it doesn't even help you against ground units anyway. So, Ensnaring Brood being cast just to slow their attack speed down. That obviously is quite effective for the Amaranths specifically, because, as you might imagine, the attack speed is really important for them, so that they can actually continue to shield steal and sustain. So, meanwhile, all the vassals roll in here and take out this base, so he doesn't even need to glass it anymore. And another army of vassals is on the way in this area. You know, again, this is sort of what I expected to happen much sooner in the game. If Mesk had done this a lot earlier with some of the Amaranth attacks or what have you, there just wouldn't have been enough of a response. And you can see here, like, 2 out of 3 attacks weren't super significant. This one stopped some mining time. That was pretty much it. And the one on the right side was completely taken care of. Meanwhile, this one, he's lost a base. Like, Shambler's now down to 2 bases versus the 4 active ones of Mesk, and this one being active shortly thereafter, I imagine. Even more static defense, why not? Is that an Artosis pylon? No, there's 3 pylons here. Okay. All right. So we do have that Monument of Sin nearly completing the Star Sovereign, so that will be in the area. If Mesk can pick off the Vithrilisks, that can be huge, right? That's something that you have to remember, is obviously the Star Sovereign. I mean, the Star Sovereign would be able to deal with a small number of them, but if they just get picked off before anything even happens, that can also be pretty big. So now only one of them left alive. Some of the vassals trying to chase. It's not going to happen. Not going to result in a kill. Surely not. Surely it just turns around and fights. No, it's waypointed onto a... it was trying to follow as Aryusta left because of the right click. So it will actually pop. All right. I mean, that's not really that significant. But... yeah. That's... the biggest problem with the composition of only Vithrilisks is that they don't deal any AoE. So, obviously what you would want to pair with them is Bactylisks, obviously Lyrilisks. I was actually going to call them Wiggleheads. But you guys know them as Wiggleheads as well. And then, you know, I guess Mutas. Mutas would be actually pretty legit with Vithrilisks. Obviously, the bounces. Anything that bounces is really solid because the bounces will deal more damage since the armor will be rendered. Now, we want to keep track of where the Star Sovereign is. It is going to be moving in this direction, which will be revealed, actually. But he could just glass this area and lock down all the ground movement. I don't think he's going to do that, but GG is just called before we even get to see much. The Star Sovereign was too much. The fact that Shambler was on 2 to 3 bases most of the game. Obviously, Mesk didn't actually saturate a lot of the bases that he took. He left that lone ridge there for till the end of the game. I can guarantee you that, even though I didn't bother looking. And yeah, he's got the Star Sovereign out. You know, he was able to at least hear the unit response finish, and that can be good enough in some ways. And that will be your game number 1. Let's check the scoreboard real quick before we head on to the next one. And yeah, I mean, our players are separated by a gulf here because nobody closes the slots apparently. But, you know, that's whatever. We have all these. Surprising amount of resilience coming out from the Shambler. In terms of how long he lasted. I was expecting him to roll over a lot sooner. I was expecting Mesk to maybe be a little bit more proactive with sending the attack waves in a few different spots. Definitely something that he can keep in mind if he's ever in a situation similar to that. But I also believe that Mesk rarely takes games off of the Shambler, especially macro games. So he might have just been in, like, there's that state where you feel maybe you're just in disbelief or something like, am I actually winning? And so maybe he was feeling that. Maybe he was just distracted. Who knows? I'm sure he'll, again, leave a comment below. Now, that being said, I would like to point out that actually our players produced a similar number of units. As Zerg, you never really want to be in that situation. I think that's probably one of the hallmarks of the fact that this game was maybe a little bit underwhelming from the Shambler. He didn't take enough bases. He thought there was an island that was reachable because of Mesk's fucking PSYOP message in the middle of the game or something. I don't know. And that is that. But hey, we're going to be sticking with this map for the next 2 games, so stay tuned. And we're back. Game number 2. Shambler in the North Spawn. Mesk in the South Spawn, and it's ZVZ this time, because of course Mesk plays random like an esteemed intellectual individual. Unlike an esteemed intellectual individual, he does not saturate the right mineral fields, but that's okay. The learning curve, bro. Meanwhile, we can see Shambler doing quite a different move, so that's good. It's good to see some players adapting. Obviously, other players will follow suit eventually. You have to imagine. There you go, see? He's starting to figure it out. So, yeah, I think it's always better to double saturate the high yields before you go off to these ones. So I usually single saturate each high yield and then start double saturating them after that. Sometimes I get a little bit lazy with my splits and I'll do like 2-on-1 or whatever. That can work, but it's a little bit slower in the early game. So if you really have the APM to spare, you can do single saturation on all of them and then move on from there. But it shouldn't result in a game loss necessarily. Now, the Quasrock opener seems to have served Shambler well, and it looks like we'll even see a repeat from that over here, but with gas. That's not what the Shambler has. Shambler has no gas. He's going to be going Zethricore or Quasilisk. I imagine it'll be Quasilisk when he scouts Quasrock with gas. Of course, sometimes it could be a mind game. Like, we know that this isn't the case here for Mesk, but it could be that he's going, just Larvos colony behind it or something. And so he's harvesting a little bit of gas here, but something else that you could do is if you know the scout timing, you could harvest gas and say you get up just enough for a single pair of Naths, and then you stop harvesting gas, and then you use your single pair of Naths to, kill the unprotected mineral line. But it's kind of banking on your opponent not building, not rescouting and not building any subsequent additional bits, right? So there will be an expansion here for Shambler surely. Oh my god! Well, it's not going to last very long, so I hope he cancels that one. Yeah, there you go. Gets his money back. And as worker doesn't actually... Oh, well, that's a bit silly of him. His worker does not actually get killed immediately there. So he should have scouted. I'm not sure if he would have seen the Vorvacore, the couple of Vorvacore eggs, but you never know. So yeah, there will be a relatively fast timing attack here, but we do see some Zethicores. A couple of Vorvacores for him as well, and a Larvosk here, not a Circuit, so this is very important. I think they have basically the same force, so it's just going to come down to micro, but there's the defender's advantage and workers nearby, so I feel like he should actually have this. But maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Ooh, these two Zethicores going down so early. It's so bad. And the Vorvacore gets sniped as well. This is really, really bad for the Shambler. He just instantly lost any semblance of an advantage he may have potentially gleaned. And so that's really funny that they ended up going the exact mirror. Now, the Vorvacore actually slowing down one of the Zethicores. That was a good idea, a good attempt. But all of his workers back here are a little bit idle. And there is a very quick reaction to a defensive circuit with a forward Larvosk. Unlikely to do any damage following this. Especially since the circuit is already up. Maybe they can focus down the... Oh, they could have actually maybe focused down that K-Grimp, but he decided against it. Maybe he could have even turned on some of the Zethicores. Any damage would have been something, right? But it doesn't look like he wants to do that. He'll instead order his workers around. And he's actually going to expand first, even though... Look at Shambler's fucking money. He's got so much. He's going to start to withdraw a little bit here, but I think that Vorvacore is going to be dead. Especially since he didn't reorder it afterwards. So he'll return home. No static defense. Maybe is this the attack that actually cleans him up? I don't think he was expecting anything. He doesn't have any static defense. He doesn't have any units. He doesn't have any Quasilisks incoming to deal with, like, maybe ranged or something. He has Nathicores, but that's not very good at actually catching these units, and takes a lot longer to build. So this could be very, very difficult here as a hold. Now, the Vorvacore will go down, so actually he's going to clean this up way easier than I thought. That's surprising. And, all right, so the fights are not yet over. There is another horde of Zeths coming down. If they take a different path, then maybe this is a bit different. But I think at this point, yeah, it's just... So there will be a slight... he could try to take an engagement at the bridge, but who's going to respond faster? It looks like... Ooh, I'm not sure. This is a better fight for Shambler for sure. And even at the end of it all, it looks like that is going to be the Shambler coming out on top there. Now, he does have the Nathicores out, but there's already a Spraith. And okay, I see which way this is going. I can already tell you, look at all these Naths. No static defense for anti-air. This Hatross gonna get destroyed as soon as it spawns. So unlucky. He couldn't even cancel it because it was just dead pretty much instantaneously. I mean, he could try to defend it. And thanks to the 200 extra health that was recently remembered to be given. Some people will get that reference. Yeah, it actually will survive. It would have survived anyway, even without that. But here come the Nats, and that will, unfortunately for Mesk, just be GG. So... That's it. It's all that needed to happen there. No anti-air defenses, no quasis, no repeat scouting. He was trying to a few times, but yeah, a little bit awkward there, and it just was constantly sending stuff around. Very, very funny game at the very least. All right, Shambler strikes back. Who wins the series? Join me for game number 3 to find out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I have it on good authority that this Hey, fuck you! I have it on good authority that this game will work without a sacrifice. And by good authority, I mean Shambler, so it probably won't work without a sacrifice. I think that's a lie. He's not Ben. Anyhow, we do have this third game. It is a ZVZ. We obviously have some smoochies going on here. Some funny Zerg game play. Now, ZVZ has also been a point of consternation. I feel like I say that every now and then. Obviously, I said it in the first game, I'm talking about Gladiuses, but this time it's just the whole matchup of ZVZ is a point of consternation. Because what can you really do? What can you really do when you're Zerg? And your opponent is also Zerg? Well, it does feel like maybe it's stupid. And that's because, obviously, Zerg as a race, very fragile. And if the same tools are available to both players, can be very bad. If you decide to do something a little bit slower or whatever, and you don't have too many options or what have you. So I'm sort of using vagaries, but you can kind of figure it out just by playing it. And or just by watching what we're seeing here. So exact same openings for both players, but this time the spawning pool is, or Quasrock pool, I should say, oh Jesus, not Brood War terms. The extractor has not been morphed yet, but somehow he's harvesting gas. I wonder how that happened. That sounds like a bug. Blizzard should patch that. Anyway, the Quasrock pool is much slower for Mesk. There will be a forced Spraith colony, because otherwise it's like auto lose basically. Because he scouted gas and he scouted the Quasrock pool. I feel like it's probably not auto-lose, but if you want to spend all of your early larvae on Zethicores, then you obviously need some anti-air, right? So I'm actually not sure what the plan is here for Mesk, because he's going for a Larvos colony. He's going for it rather quickly. I do think that this is a solution to the ZVZ silliness, is getting more larvae, so you can simultaneously produce workers to boost your economy and military units to keep up with your opponent. But I still think your opponent, especially if they also go Larvask and then just double down on military, can still destroy you, right? There's not as much of a defender's advantage for Zerg as maybe there should be. Mesk actually suggested a while ago giving Hatcherosks a very small, like low damage attack or something. So something like a Spraith Colony attack, I guess, but even weaker. And maybe that would actually help. I'm not sure. But in this particular engagement, yeah, there's really not going to be a whole lot left over. All the damage is gone because the Shambler lost all of his... there you go. There you go. The Shambler lost all of his Zethicores pretty much, all barring one. He'll confirm no expansion in that area. This map in particular must be really hard for ZVC now that I think about it, because the bases are actually very far away. Now you can sort of like maybe macro hatch over here or something. I don't know. You can't exactly wall or whatever. So, and all the Zerg units are super slippery and stuff anyway. So I don't know, man. It doesn't seem like it's going to be too feasible. 100 gas here. So I think maybe what Mesk wants to do is go for a Zorkish Shroud. Lachesis would just shred everything on the ground. He does have to be aware of the Nathracor follow-up. Obviously that killed him in the last game. So yeah, maybe actually, depending on what he goes for, we could get a... Oh, he went for an Ovaleth. Why would he go for... Oh, this is the game that he was talking about earlier. So he didn't realize you can't load Circuith colonies into Avaleths. You have to load them into Kagrins. Or you have to load Kagrins into the Avaleths. And that is definitely the first mistake that may cost him quite a bit here. He's going to lose his Quasar pool. I mean, it's not game-ending, but it feels really shit to have to rebuild that since it's 200 minerals. And yeah, I think that Avaleth is obviously just like... Shambler must be like, what the fuck? What is he doing? Why is he doing that? Is he going to try to drop me? Yeah, I was going to airlift circuits, but you can't anymore. So again, if you wanted the tier 2 transport, that would give you the ability to load circuits specifically, or you could load the Kagrins. He just didn't know that, and that is, I mean, that's just rough, right? That's, what can you really do? Now, he does have 2 Spraith colonies here, so he should be capable of defending the Nathracors with relative ease. There's a lot of ground forces here, but at the very least, what Mesk can do is confirm no expansion. Actually, I don't know if he was scouted or what, but his presence seems to have drawn the Nathracors back. I don't know what's going on with that. Oh yeah, look at this. He's trying to chase down the Zeths. So I guess we're going to settle into a bit of a longer game. We do have the Lachesis, we have Azori Stilets because he's got so many minerals, but he doesn't want to expand. Probably doesn't feel safe to expand, to be fair. He has the Avaleth. Obviously, the Nathracor went to scout this to see if this was being expanded to. And, yeah. What he could have done maybe with those Zeths is burrow them in places, because obviously air units can't reveal the burrowed units because you have to be standing over the ground to reveal them. And so obviously air units can't stand anywhere. So maybe something like that would have been cheeky, and then forced his ground units to move into a specific area if he wanted to deal with them. Or like watch that area, right? Because otherwise you could just get run by it. There's only a couple of Zethicars though, so probably wasn't going to be making anything too significant. I would have some more sips of coffee, but I actually seem to be out of coffee. Guys, does anybody know where I can get more coffee? It's all right. There was some dregs in there. I got to keep the silly little things creative there. I will need to make new birth animations for the Gorgakor and some of the other units that used to be coming out of cocoons, which is why they look so tismic when they actually birth. The Gorgakor here is not really going to get too much done, but I like the idea. The Lekizalisk is enough to ward this off anyway. So, actually, versus this composition, he can keep building Gorgakors and the occasional Lekizalisk, and there's just nothing that the Shambler can do. So, even though he lost his Quasark pool, which is regrettable, you know, it's enough. Like, it's possible to do something with this. So we are going to see the attempted expansion down there. Remember, the Nathrakors did scout it out earlier. I'm not sure if... it looks like maybe there's going to be a similar move over here. The Ovolith is actually just going to be to detect the Lekizalisk, so never mind on that. Gorgakor is escorting the expansion. Dude, tell me this doesn't look like a campaign mission. This is where, like, Zaz tells you to never use your last Droleth to make a building. I guess that was Dagoth who said that, right? I can't remember. I just like the idea that, you know, it's supposed to be instinctual or whatever, and then it's just stupid instead. Nice characterization. This Zethicor standing vigil. And yeah, actually the first to expand is going to be Mesk. But you look at this army, it's pretty spooky, especially if he only has a single Lekizalisk to try to, you know, push it down. He is harvesting from the ridge, so he didn't forget that it exists. Obviously, he forgot that this one exists. We all remember this from the game one. I think the Shambler will be able to break him with a single attack, but it really is down to whether or not Shambler thinks that he can do that. If he feels like he actually has to defend, or if he feels like he's threatened in any way or something, slows things down or what have you, that could be enough to get Mesk the advantage. If this base actually goes up and he gets the gas from here, he can afford more Lekizalisks. Suddenly he can, you know, withstand more attacks or whatever. We do see a couple of Gorgakors going down here for only... He traded 2 Gorgakors for 3 workers, and they were all the mineral Droleths anyway. Okay, pathing? Question mark? And yeah, I think he probably like A-moved or something. I don't know. I'd have to rewind the tape, which we don't currently support as a feature yet. And by yet, I mean ever, because I ain't doing that in Brood War. Now, we don't have anything guarding this back base, but there are Gorgakors in the area, so they are on call. What do we have here? More Zoroastrians. By themselves, you can imagine they aren't super good. Yeah, okay, this would have been scouted. Yeah, he would have seen the creep. Or the Kagra, if you want to be super newfangled. Hugged. Now, this Kagran colony is put in such a good spot because it blocks this and makes this... Well, I guess this is probably fine in efficiency-wise. But it blocks this. It makes this inefficient. So that's good. Love to see that. Don't worry, the Wandering is still less stupid than it used to be. And now, yeah, it looks like this base is going to be taken. So this is basically... This is a huge advantage for the Shambler because he has so many more minerals to get at his disposal. However, Lekizalisks are pretty good. So maybe that won't be the end of the world. I still feel like he could break him with just the current attack forces that he has right now. And yeah, we're even going to see the Zoroastrians clean house over here. They should... Oh. There it is. I think that was incidental. I'm not sure if Mesk spotted that. But either way, good enough. I can instantly saturate the Excisant, which I suppose he will probably be doing. Nope, just one. Okay. Well, he'll come back to that. Now, one of these Gorgakors will be revealed by the Zethicor. So that will have given up the sort of the ghost there. I feel like that's a little bit rough because now the Gorgakors can... Well, they can do some damage here if he's not careful, right? He has to kind of kite. And he's confirming there's nothing actually in this base, so... Now, Skithercores are faster, but not fast enough that you can't do stuff like this, like what Mesk is doing, where he's like moving them back and forth and stuff. However, unfortunately, he's given up the micro a little bit. And yeah, that is going to be it. So he's not even going to lose a single Skith. So pretty good trades there. Nathrakors coming out, obviously with Gorgakors, very, very good. Because you can use the Gorgakors as the heavier, wider AoE, and the Nathrakors can follow up to force your, almost like a front line, even though they're both melee units, so it sounds a little bit weird to say. But the Skith, of course, have to kite back from the Nats, and the Nats are fast enough, not as fast as Skiths, but fast enough to sort of maybe do something. And so he's even going to, I think, lose the stack of Skiths. He's going to lose the colony at least. So there you go. Chased around. This is just being annoying, you know? Maybe he can confirm the island. If he's not careful, he will just lose them all. And taking a third base of his own. Actually, so Mesk is still ahead in eco, right? He's got the gas. He's not really harvesting anything from here just yet, but you know, he can saturate both of the ridges with the remaining workers that he has. It looks like he wants for defenses and minerals instead. That's fine. Yeah, I'm really, realistically, I'm not sure what he's going to be building. He's getting Nats. And he's going to try to maybe defend and ward off the Skithercore attack. I think he'll be successful because he has the Nats here and they can deal with the AoE quite effectively here. So he weakens a bunch. I don't think he's killed any. And the remorph is happening. The remorph is faster, but it won't be canceled, and so he will lose the money there. And at this point, yeah, that's a horrible move from the Shambler. You never really want to be doing that. And now there's another Spraith anyway, so we'll have to be warded off. With the remorph times being shorter, but the initial Kagrant times being faster, I feel like that's a nice little push in the right direction to really unify it with the idea of, you know, Zerg building regression. I feel like you actually get more of that kind of gameplay now. Now, all these Nats are not really going to accomplish too much. They will confirm the Excisum, but no workers. They're even going to go back in, which definitely questionable. More Nats messing up. This base, no anti-air yet, so that's probably going to be an L plus ratio, as the kids would say. I only know that because sometimes my brother will say not that, but something else that's related to that, and I can't remember because I'm too old. Well, a bit rough, but here come the Gorger cores, so this is where things get a little bit more complicated for the Shambler's micro. He's already starting to lose a bunch. He's going to try to sort of maybe moving shot, like kite back and stuff, or block, as I call it. And yeah, a very slow reaction from Mesk there. He's going to try to focus fire the Gorger cores, which is an acceptable move, especially since there's not too many Nats. And so he is going to need to reinforce that base if he doesn't want to lose it. And I think maybe he's just going to lose it. And let's see, the Quasis are in, the Nats are still here vanguarding, some more structures being morphed. And look at that, they'll even, there's enough Nats here. I obviously can't group select, so I don't know exactly how many. There's enough Nats here to at least make it somewhat costly. Another massive Skither cores coming out. Still not mining, still not taking the space, even though there's a worker underneath that Ovalith. So this is actually really, really rough. And yeah, no Spraiths here yet, no morphs, too much micro elsewhere. And this attack move is just going to be quite brutal. I thought I saw a bunch of Gorger cores in a queue somewhere, but I don't know where they are. He's actually going to confirm that there's a worker here, but it's not actually being used. Well, he will if he moves up a little bit. Remember, the sight range of the Nathacore is quite low. And so, yeah, even though Mesk is technically still in the same number of bases, he has a huge advantage in terms of, well, maybe not a huge advantage, a significant enough advantage with an extra ridge, basically. However, he might not have a base for much longer. Remember all the ground units sitting over here. Mesk actually has enough for the Iral Iris, but he's morphing it right in front of him. Is he going to notice? Oh, no. Oof. He lost it. And, oh, man. Wow, that's rough. Yeah, he had a ton of gas. I was kind of expecting more Gorgs or maybe like a Hydrock then or something. I feel like the game didn't have to end there. I feel like it could have gone on for quite a lot longer. And but it did end at exactly 1337, which if you were born before the Twin Towers fell, then you kind of know what that means. And if you're born after, then I can't believe you're a legal adult, if you even are a legal adult. And that is the end of the castover. We get to see units again. Pretty even on the produced, but obviously more on the killed and stuff. So for Shambler. Shambler had a bunch of big ground army. He could have probably tried to push and maybe end the game there, but he wanted to play it a little bit safer. This game is very winnable for Mesk, and I think he'll think the same way once he watches back the castover and sort of sees what kind of opportunities he may have had in that particular matchup. He had the eco lead for a good while. If he had kept that third base alive, stationed some more anti-air there and stuff, then he would have been golden. But he was microing a lot of his units a lot of the time, and he floated a bunch of money, and obviously we know how that goes. So join me for the next castover later on. Welcome to the month of March, and yeah, long live CMBW castovers, I suppose, and long live playing the game every single day on our Discord server, which you can always find in a link in a comment below or in the description below. See you there.